In the eastern suburbs, within a grand villa, a man lay on an oversized bed in a third-floor bedroom. Beads of sweat clung to his forehead, glistening in the dim morning light. Evelyn, Evelyn, don't let go. Suddenly, a monstrous wave crashed over them, and the hand he held so tightly was ripped mercilessly from his grasp. Evelyn! The man on the bed cried out in terror, his eyes flying open to stare at the blank canvas of the ceiling. A sharp knock echoed from the hallway. Ethan, Ethan, are you all right? Ethan Shaw sat up, the nightmare clinging to him like a shroud. He lit a cigarette, a habit that had grown from a casual indulgence to a desperate need since. Evelyn Reed had vanished. A veil of white smoke rose around him, obscuring his features, making the handsome lines of his face seem blurred and uncertain. Hearing no reply, the person outside pushed the door open. Ethan, is it your headaches again? Clara Vance sat on the edge of the bed, her hand reaching for his forehead. He flinched away, a subtle but unmistakable rejection. Clara bit her lip, her hand falling limply to her side. She watched him for a long moment, the silence thick with unspoken words. Breakfast is ready, she said softly. Ethan took a final, deep drag from his cigarette, crushing the butt into the overflowing ashtray on the nightstand. He glanced out. The window, the sky was already bright with the new day. He threw back the covers and walked towards the bathroom without a word. When he emerged 15 minutes later, he found Clara still waiting. You can go, he said, his voice flat. Ethan, we're husband and wife, she reminded him, her voice trembling slightly. A cold, mirthless laugh escaped him. He stepped closer, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. Tell me, he whispered, his voice laced with ice. How many scalpels did it take to create this face? The color drained from Clara's cheeks. Ethan, just be a good girl and play the part of Mrs. Shaw, he said, patting her cheek dismissively. He turned and walked towards the walk-in closet, and from now on, his voice drifted back, sharp as a shard of glass. Don't come in here without my permission. Clara stood frozen, her hands clenched into fists. She bit her lip until she tasted blood, then turned and fled the room. Inside the vast closet, rows of immaculate clothing hung in perfect order. On the left, a somber collection of men's suits. On the right, a vibrant explosion of beautiful women's dresses, untouched for a year. Ethan's gaze fell upon the dresses, and his mind drifted away. Ethan, you're such a spendthrift. A woman's voice, full of mock anger, echoed in his memory. Yes, I am, he had replied, his own voice thick with helpless adoration as he wrapped his arms around her from behind. How am I ever going to wear all of these clothes? She had grumbled, pouting playfully. You have a lifetime, he had whispered, his lips brushing against her ear. You're impossible, she had giggled, squirming in his embrace. He had just laughed, a low, warm sound, before capturing her perpetually moving lips with his own. My love, where are you? Ethan whispered to the empty room, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. In another country, thousands of miles away. Evelyn Reed sat in her wheelchair, her gaze fixed on the gleaming steel and glass skyscraper before her. The man she needed was in there. For a month, she had patrolled the perimeter of this building, a silent, hopeful sentinel, but he remained elusive. She refused to be discouraged. Whatever the cost, she had to find him. He was her only hope of restoring her face, of erasing the past years. Horror. She had to return to the man she loved, and to her daughter, as the woman she once was, not the broken creature she had become. She watched a group of glamorous women chattering excitedly as they entered the building's opulent lobby. Evelyn frowned. They were already beautiful. Why would they willingly submit to a surgeon's knife? She guided her wheelchair along the pavement, her daily pilgrimage continuing. Still, there was no sign of Dr. Julian Croft. Suddenly, the squeal of tires shattered the city's hum. A luxury sports car was careening towards her. Evelyn frantically tried to turn her wheelchair, but the wheels locked, refusing to budge. As the car bore down on her, she stared, her eyes wide with terror. Was this it? Was fate truly so cruel as to take her life now? The car screeched to a halt less than a foot from her chair. The driver's door swung open, and a man emerged. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. She turned her head and found herself looking into a pair of intense, dark eyes. She froze. Do you have a death wish, miss? Dr. Julian Croft stood over her, his expression a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. It took her a moment to find her voice. Dr. Croft? The one and only, he confirmed with a slight, arrogant nod. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost made her dizzy, washed over Evelyn. Dr. Croft, please, you have to help me. Help you? He looked at her with genuine interest, a slow smile playing on his lips. My face. Evelyn's hand instinctively went to her cheek, tracing the hideous, raised scar that had stolen her confidence and her identity. Julian knelt before her, his movements fluid and graceful. He reached out and removed the medical mask she wore to hide her disfigurement. She flinched, trying to turn away, but he gently cupped her face, his touch surprisingly firm. He studied her features with a clinical eye. You have beautiful bone structure, he murmured. But this scar is certainly an eyesore. Can you fix it? She whispered, hope and fear warring within her. Of course, I can, he said, his gaze intense, his thin lips pressed into a thoughtful line. Evelyn's face lit up with a brilliant smile. Thank you, Dr. Croft. Thank you. Don't thank me just yet, Julian said, a sly, almost predatory smile touching his lips. Evelyn's smile faltered. I can give you back a beautiful face, he said, his voice a low purr. But you have to agree to one condition. What is it? She asked, her heart sinking. I'm in need of an assistant, he said, his eyes gleaming as he leaned in close, his breath warm against her cheek. A personal one. The implication hung in the air, and the color drained from Evelyn's face. I'm married, she said quickly, her voice firm. I have a daughter who is just over a year old. I don't care, Julian said with a shrug, straightening up. Evelyn bit her lip, her resolve hardening. She began to turn her wheelchair to leave. Julian's hand shot out, resting on her own. She snatched her hand away as if she'd been stung. All right, he said, laughing. Since you've managed to capture my interest, how about this? You can work for me. Be my housekeeper. Evelyn looked up at him, her expression unreadable. Evelyn Reed, Julian said suddenly, his smile gone. Wife of the CEO of the Shaw Corporation. You know who I am? She gasped. That wedding 5 years ago was the event of the season. I watched the broadcast, of course, he said with a nonchalant flick of his brow. Hearing him say it, a tidal wave of longing for her husband, Ethan, and their little girl washed over her. She wanted nothing more than to be with them, to hold them, to tell them she was alive. Seeing the hesitation on her face, Julian leaned down and, in one smooth motion, scooped her out of the wheelchair. What are you doing? Evelyn cried out, startled. Your silence is your consent, he said, placing her gently into the passenger seat of his car. He walked around to the driver's side. I'll perform your surgery. Wait, my wheelchair, she exclaimed as he started the engine. You won't be needing it anymore, he said simply. But how will I get around? Julian turned to look at her, a genuine smile softening his features. Mrs. Reed, do you intend to spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair? Her eyes widened in surprise. You can fix my legs? He shook his head. Her face fell immediately. But, he said, leaning close again, the atmosphere in the car instantly charged with intimacy. I can introduce you to a doctor who can. Evelyn instinctively pushed him away. Julian just chuckled. Fasten your seatbelt. Oh, right. He put the car in gear, and they sped away from the curb. A week later, Julian performed the surgery on Evelyn's face. It was a complete success. On the day the bandages were to be removed, she was a nervous wreck, her eyes squeezed shut, too terrified to look. Julian carefully unwrapped the gauze, revealing a delicate, exquisitely beautiful face. He smiled, satisfied with his work. Mrs. Reed, you can open your eyes now. Hearing his voice, she slowly opened her eyes. He handed her a mirror. When she saw the reflection, she gasped. A stunningly beautiful, but completely unfamiliar, face stared back at her. This face suits you better, Julian said with a confident smile. Evelyn stared at the stranger in the mirror. It's more beautiful than my original face, she admitted, a tremor in her voice. But my husband and my daughter, they won't recognize me. Julian laughed. You've been missing for over a year. Are you so certain your husband is still waiting for you? Evelyn froze, her lips pressed into a thin, white line. Surely you've seen the news from your home country, Mrs. Reed, Julian said, watching her expression intently. What are you trying to say, Dr. Croft? Men, they love power, but they love beauty even more. Evelyn remained silent. From what I hear, before Julian could finish, Evelyn cut him off. I'm hungry, doctor. He paused, studying her for a moment before nodding. All right, let's get some food. He lifted her from the bed and placed her back in the wheelchair, pushing her towards the door. What would you like to eat? Anything is fine. My dear Mrs. Reed, there is no dish called anything on the menu. He took her to the most renowned restaurant in the city. Throughout the meal, Julian watched Evelyn, who was lost in thought, her food untouched. She couldn't stop replaying his words in her head. Could Ethan have moved on? The meal was tasteless, each bite a chore. Back at his residence, Evelyn locked herself in her room. After the accident, she had been in a coma. She had only woken up 3 months ago. After thanking the elderly couple who had saved her life, she had come here immediately, unwilling to let Ethan see her in such a grotesque state. She picked up her phone and, with a trembling hand, dialed the number that was etched into her heart. After hearing another disappointing report from the private investigator, Ethan's hope dwindled once again. He left work early, his heart too heavy to focus. The first thing he did when he got home was go to the nursery. Seeing his daughter, Lily, was the only solace he had. She was a quiet baby who smiled readily. And in her smile, he saw a miniature version of Evelyn. They said daughters usually looked like their fathers, but Lily was the spitting image of her mother. After lulling her to sleep, he left the nursery and went to the master bedroom. He tossed his phone onto the bed, stripped off his jacket and tie, and stepped into the shower. The sound of running water filled the silence. Clara came upstairs and saw the partially open bedroom door. She hesitated for a moment before pushing it open and walking in. Seeing his discarded suit and tie, she picked them up and carried them to the walk-in closet to hang them properly. Her hand brushed against the rows of Evelyn's dresses, and a bitter jealousy washed over her. Just then, a phone began to ring. She walked back into the bedroom and saw Ethan's phone vibrating on the bed. She picked it up. An unsaved number. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. Evelyn clutched her phone, her voice shaking. Ethan. Clara froze. She paused, composing herself. Who is this, please? Hearing a woman's voice, Evelyn was stunned. She pulled the phone away from her ear to check the number again. It was Ethan's. She hadn't dialed wrong. Is this Mr. Shaw's phone? Evelyn asked, testing the waters. It is. He's in the shower at the moment. May I take a message? Clara replied smoothly. Her words, combined with Julian's earlier warning, felt like a physical blow. Evelyn took a deep breath. And who, may I ask, are you? Clara paused for dramatic effect. I'm Clara Vance, she said, her voice dripping with ownership. Ethan's wife. Evelyn's eyes widened in horror. Just then, she heard Ethan's voice from the other end. Who is it? She slammed the phone down, her connection to her old life severed. Ethan emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, rubbing his wet hair with another. He frowned when he saw Clara. Startled, Clara spun around. Oh, it was a wrong number, I think. An unsaved one. Ethan's brow furrowed. He walked over and took the phone from her hand. It was indeed an unknown number. This was his private phone. Only his parents and his closest friends had the number. Get out, he said coldly. Clara's composure finally broke. Ethan, I am your legally wedded wife. You can't treat me like this. He let out a derisive snort. Do you even know what a legally wedded wife is? Her face paled. Regardless, I am your wife. Your parents approve of me as their daughter-in-law. My wife is not dead. Ethan cut in, his voice laced with venom, and we are not divorced. No, Evelyn is gone. Clara's voice rose hysterically. If she were alive, why wouldn't she come back? Why wouldn't she come back for her daughter? Ethan shoved her away, his eyes blazing. Clara, I'm warning you. Evelyn Reed is my wife. Alive or dead, she is the only one I will ever acknowledge. Clara stumbled backward, her face a mask of grief. The moment you married me, she stopped being your wife. Get out, Ethan roared, flinging the damp towel at her. She's dead. She's never coming back. Clara screamed, tears of rage and sorrow streaming down her face. You're asking for it. Ethan's eyes turned glacial. He lunged forward, his hand clamping around her throat. The cold fury in his eyes was terrifying. Clara, if you ever speak of Evelyn like that again, I will end you. Go on then. Strangle me, she choked out, clawing at his hand. If you kill me, you'll be a murderer. Your daughter has already lost her mother. Now she'll lose her father too. His grip slackened instantly. He looked at her with pure loathing, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. Clara, the only person in this world who can push me to my limit is Evelyn. For what you've done tonight, you will pay. You think you can destroy me without consequences, Ethan? Think about your precious daughter, she spat. He froze, his eyes turning crimson with rage. He lunged for her again, his grip on her throat tightening with brutal force. Clara's face turned from red to a deathly white. Her hands beat weakly against his arm. At that exact moment, the sound of a baby crying came from the nursery. The sound pierced through Ethan's rage, and he instantly regained his senses. He shoved Clara violently to the floor and stormed out of the room. Clara lay on the carpet, gasping for air. She watched his retreating back, her eyes filled with a murderous light. "I will make you pay, Ethan Shaw." The next morning, around 10 o'clock, Ethan's mother, Diana Shaw, stormed into his office. "Ethan, what is going on?" she demanded. "Mother, what are you doing here?" he asked, rubbing his temples. "Did you hit Clara?" Ethan didn't answer. "Ethan, how could you be so reckless? She is your uncle's wife's niece. You know as well as I do that she was placed in your life for a reason," Diana said, her voice a mixture of anger and disappointment. "Mother, please go home. Father needs you." "I can handle my own affairs," he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Diana looked at her son, her heart aching for him. "Ethan, whether Evelyn is missing or gone," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "You have to live. You have Lily. If something happens to you, she'll be an orphan." "Mother, I'm divorcing Clara." He couldn't stand the sight of her for another day. He had been forced to marry her, a cruel twist of fate because she bore a slight resemblance to Evelyn, a resemblance that had tricked his grieving daughter into calling her mama. "Not yet," Diana sighed. The two branches of the Shaw family had been at war for a generation. Now, the conflict was escalating. Her husband, in a strategic move, had orchestrated events that sent his nephew, Charles's son, to prison. In retaliation, Charles had engineered the accident that had taken Evelyn, and now he had pushed his wife's niece, Clara, into Ethan's life. The root of it all was their father, the old patriarch, who had failed to treat his sons equally, turning brothers into bitter enemies. She had tried to mediate for over 20 years, but her husband's pride was unyielding. Now, both sides were bleeding. "Mother, why did it have to be Evelyn?" "Son, there is no why. When Evelyn married you, she became a part of the Shaw family. She had to face the consequences. Do you know, Mother? The heart inside my chest is already dead." Diana stepped forward, her hand cupping his face. "I never wanted this, son, but your father." Ethan pushed her hand away. "Go home, Mother." Diana looked at him, the words dying on her lips. She turned and walked out. In a suite at a luxury hotel, Clara opened the door and walked in. She saw a man standing by the floor-to-ceiling window and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "Uncle Charles." Charles Shaw turned and swept her into his arms, carrying her to the bed. Afterward, Clara lay nestled in his arms. "Uncle, when are we going to make our move against Ethan?" "Patience," Charles murmured, lighting a cigarette. "He almost killed me last night," she pouted. "Did he now?" Charles exhaled a cloud of smoke, his eyes drifting down to her neck. "Does it hurt?" "Of course it hurts." Charles smirked, leaning down to kiss the faint bruises on her neck. "Better now?" "You're terrible," she cooed. The phone on the nightstand rang. Charles glanced at it and answered. "Yes, I understand. I'm on my way." "Where are you going?" Clara asked, clutching his arm. "Be good," he said, giving her a quick, passionless kiss before pushing her away. He got dressed and left without another word. Clara's face hardened. She grabbed her own phone and dialed. "That old fool Charles still isn't ready to move on Ethan." "Be patient," the voice on the other end replied. "The best part of the show is yet to come." "How are things on your end?" Clara asked. "Everything is proceeding as planned." "Oomph, easy for you to say. You have your beauty to keep you company. I'm the one who's miserable," she complained. "Shall I send over a few muscular men to keep you entertained?" Clara's eyes lit up. "Oh yes, please." Wait for the delivery. After his mother left, Ethan had no will to work. He slumped in his chair, staring blankly out the window. His private phone, sitting on the desk, suddenly buzzed to life. He flinched, then grabbed it. An unknown number. He let it ring until it stopped. A moment later, it rang again. This pattern repeated several times before finally falling silent. A few minutes later, the phone chimed with a message notification. Annoyed, Ethan glanced at the screen. A single, anonymous text. "The woman you're looking for, she's not gone." Ethan's eyes widened. He scrambled through his recent calls and quickly dialed the unknown number. "It's you?" Ethan said, stunned. "Yes, it's me." The voice on the other end replied. "We need to meet." Done. In another country, Evelyn had remained locked in her room ever since that devastating phone call. She couldn't believe Ethan would marry someone else, but the woman's voice echoed relentlessly in her mind. A sharp, piercing doorbell rang. Evelyn frowned, carefully maneuvering herself from the bed into her wheelchair and rolling towards the door. She opened it to find Julian Croft leaning against the doorframe, a wicked smile on his face. "What do you want?" "Mrs. Reed, have you forgotten something?" he asked lazily. "What?" she asked, confused. He tilted his chin towards her legs. "Your legs." Evelyn stared at him. "You can fix them?" He shook his head with a sigh. "Your memory really is terrible." She looked at him, bewildered. "I told you," he said patiently. "I would introduce you to a doctor who could heal your legs." A slow, brilliant smile spread across her face. "Thank you, Dr. Croft." 6 months later, Evelyn's legs were fully healed. Julian stood beside her as she took a few tentative steps. "So, you're really planning on going back?" he asked, a strange note in his voice. "Yes." She could walk like a normal person now, though a dull ache remained if she was on her feet for too long. The doctor had assured her it was normal and would fade with time. "Your husband married another woman. What place is there for you to return to?" Julian teased. Evelyn just smiled, a serene, knowing look in her eyes. "He can marry whomever he likes. But our daughter is mine." "So, you plan to fight the great Ethan Shaw for custody?" Julian raised an eyebrow. Evelyn looked at him, her smile unwavering. She said nothing. No, she wouldn't fight Ethan for custody. She was going to win him back. A few days later, at an international airport, Evelyn Reed stepped onto her home country's soil. She looked up at the familiar sky. "Ethan," she whispered, "I'm home." She hailed a taxi and gave the driver the address of the home she had once shared with Ethan. The car pulled up to the villa. She paid the driver and got out. The house was quiet. She stood there for a moment, then walked to the gate and entered the security code. The gate clicked open. Inside, a young maid was cleaning. The maid looked up, saw a stranger, and froze. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Maria?" Evelyn said. "Yes? Do I know you?" Maria asked, studying the unfamiliar face. "It's me, Evelyn," she said. "Your master's wife. Your lady." "You?" "They changed my face, Maria, but they couldn't change my voice," Evelyn said with a gentle smile. She made a small, secret hand gesture they used to share when teasing Ethan. Maria's eyes widened in recognition. "Madam?" "Oh, madam, you're back," she cried, rushing forward to give Evelyn a tight hug. "Yes," Evelyn whispered, patting her back. "I'm back." In her house, there had never been masters and servants, only family. The staff adored her. "Oh," Maria gasped, pulling away. "What is it?" "Madam, the master, he married another woman." "What are you?" "I know," Evelyn said calmly. "But what will you do?" Maria asked, her face full of worry. "Where is this new Mrs. Shaw?" "She's away on a business trip," Maria replied. "Good. Maria, don't tell anyone I'm back." "Not yet." "Yes, of course, madam." That night, Maria secretly brought dinner up to Evelyn's room. Later, as she was carrying the empty dishes down, the head housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, stopped her. "Maria, what were you doing upstairs?" "Shoo." Maria glanced around nervously, then whispered, "The madam is back." "What?" "But she just left this morning on her trip," Mrs. Gable said, confused. "No, not that madam. The original madam," Maria hissed. Mrs. Gable stared at her. "It's Miss Evelyn, little Miss Lily's mother. She's back." The older woman's eyes widened in disbelief. She reached out and touched Maria's forehead. "You don't have a fever." "Mrs. Gable, it's true. She's resting upstairs. She asked me not to tell anyone." Mrs. Gable paused. "I have to see for myself." "Don't. She's sleeping." "Please, Mrs. Gable, wait until morning." "Very well." The housekeeper nodded slowly, her mind reeling. Around 11 o'clock, Ethan returned to the villa, smelling strongly of alcohol. Since learning that Evelyn might be alive, his longing for her had become an unbearable ache. He wanted to find her, but his uncle was blocking his every move. The truth was far more complicated than a simple family feud. An outside force was trying to destroy the entire Shaw family. His uncle and his father, rivals for decades, had finally realized they were being played. They had formed a reluctant alliance to unmask this hidden enemy, a game that had led to his cousin being framed and his wife's accident. He stumbled into the living room and collapsed onto the sofa. After some time, he forced himself up and headed upstairs. He paused outside the nursery, then quietly pushed the door open. In the soft glow of the night light, his daughter slept peacefully. He smiled, gently stroked her small nose, pulled the blanket up over her, and left as quietly as he had entered. He walked into the master bedroom and switched on the light. He froze. The covers on the bed were rumpled, and there was a distinct shape underneath them. The fog of alcohol vanished instantly. He strode to the bed and ripped the covers back, his voice like ice. "Clara, I told you." Awakened by his voice, Evelyn stirred, blinking in the sudden light. She saw the face so close to hers, a face that had haunted her dreams for a year. For a moment, she was lost. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, stunned by the sight of the beautiful stranger in his bed. Evelyn's senses returned. A slow, playful smile spread across her lips. "Husband." Hearing her voice, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "Evelyn." "It's me, my love. I'm back." He was speechless, his eyes devouring her face, searching for the familiar in the new. You're Evelyn?" "My wife?" he asked, his voice full of disbelief. Evelyn's smile widened. She wrapped her arms around his neck. "Mr. Shaw, I thought your wife's name was Clara?" He ignored her teasing. "Evelyn," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "I've missed you so much." "Husband." Evelyn buried her face in his chest, her voice a soft murmur. "Evelyn, Evelyn." He held her tightly, as if he could meld her into his very being, whispering her name like a prayer. She tilted her head back, her eyes shining. "Ethan, I'm home." He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, a deep, desperate kiss that poured a year of pain, loss, and longing into a single, breathtaking moment. The first rays of morning sun filtered through the curtains. The woman in the bed slept soundly, a peaceful smile on her lips. The man beside her hadn't slept at all. He couldn't believe it. His wife, missing for over a year, was truly back. "Husband." Evelyn opened her eyes and met Ethan's adoring gaze. "You're awake?" he asked softly, his fingers gently caressing her cheek. Are you hungry? I'll have Mrs. Gable bring breakfast up." Evelyn snuggled closer to him. "Ethan, now that I'm back, what about Clara?" "Her." A cold glint appeared in Ethan's eyes. "Her good days are over. But she's your wife." "No," Ethan said firmly. "It was all fake. A setup by my uncle." "Your uncle?" "My father and my uncle. They are brothers." "But didn't your father have his son sent to prison?" "That was also part of the setup," Ethan explained. "A trap to lure the real mastermind out of the shadows." Evelyn stared at him, stunned. "Evelyn," Ethan asked, his voice serious, "did Julian Croft hurt you?" She paused, then shook her head. "No." "Husband, do you know him?" "I didn't before, but I know who he is now." "Who?" "His father was my grandfather's illegitimate son. The woman had tried to use the child to force her way into the Shaw family, but his grandfather had refused, sending her and the boy abroad. The woman died tragically, but her son survived, his heart filled with a burning hatred for the family that had rejected him. A hatred he had passed down to his own son, Julian. Evelyn sighed. "In a way, Julian is a tragic figure." "What? Are you falling for him now?" Ethan shot her a look. "And why not? You married Clara," she retorted. "When did you find out?" "After my surgery, I called you." The woman who answered called herself your wife, Clara. My heart broke. Ethan flinched, the memory of that night returning with a new, painful clarity. He had always ignored unknown numbers. What a foolish habit. It had cost him dearly. "Evelyn, Clara looks a lot like you." Lily became attached to her. "My parents, they forced me to marry her," he explained desperately. "I know," Evelyn said, her voice full of conviction. "I know nothing happened between you two." "How could you know that?" "While I was recovering, I received several anonymous text messages. They told me not to doubt you, and to be careful of the people around me." "Show me the messages." "I deleted them," she said with an innocent shrug. "I was afraid Julian would see them." Ethan stared at her for a second, then a slow smile spread across his face. "My Evelyn has gotten smarter," he said, ruffling her hair. "It seems Julian isn't such a bad person after all," she mused. Ethan, who was getting dressed, glanced at her. "Does anyone ever write villain on their forehead?" She giggled. "Evelyn," Ethan said, his voice full of gratitude. "Thank you for trusting me." "I was trusting myself," she said coyly. Ethan had once thrown himself in front of a car for her, nearly dying to save her. A man who loved her that deeply would never betray her. The anonymous texts had merely confirmed what her heart already knew. When Ethan and Evelyn came downstairs, Mrs. Gable was cooing at the baby in her arms. She looked up and saw Evelyn. "Madam, it's me," Evelyn said, walking over and taking her daughter. The little girl tilted her head, studied her mother's new face for a long moment, and then broke into a wide, sweet smile. Ethan, look. She recognizes me. Evelyn cried out with joy. Ethan came over and pinched his daughter's chubby cheek. That's my good girl. A mother's heart always knows, Mrs. Gable said with a teary smile. Meanwhile, Clara pushed her luggage into a presidential suite at another hotel. Why did you let her go? She complained to the man sitting on the sofa, swirling a glass of red wine. Julian Croft didn't answer right away. He stared into the crimson liquid. I fell in love with her, he said quietly. Clara froze. And because I love her, I don't want to hurt her, he added with a sad smile. What kind of logic is that? If you love her, you take her. And if you can't have her, you destroy her. Clara snapped. Julian looked at her, his expression unreadable. Clara, that bone-deep viciousness of yours hasn't changed a bit. They made me this way, she said coldly. After her parents died in a car crash, she was adopted by the brother of Charles Shaw's wife. He was a monster who had abused her. When she told her new aunt, the woman who was supposed to protect her, she was ignored. That was the day the seeds of hatred were planted. She had vowed revenge on them all. By chance, she had met Julian, whose own quest for revenge against the Shaws made them perfect allies. You already got your revenge, didn't you? Your foster father is dead. Your dear aunt lost her mind. And her husband, Charles, is wrapped around your little finger, Julian said, taking a sip of wine. It's not enough. I want to make Ethan Shaw pay. Julian gave a short, bitter laugh. You haven't fallen for him, have you? Clara's face went rigid. I would never love a man like that. He doesn't deserve my love. Women, Julian sighed, always so dishonest. He set his wine glass down and clapped his hands twice. The door burst open and several large men rushed in, grabbing Clara. I don't want to see this woman again, Julian said calmly. Yes, boss. They dragged a screaming Clara from the room. Julian, you bastard, MMPH. Her curses were muffled as a hand was clamped over her mouth. The door closed, and the room was silent again. Julian took out his phone and opened the photo gallery. He looked at a picture of Evelyn. I've avenged you, Evelyn, he whispered. He knew it was Clara who had hired the men to push Evelyn off that cliff. Suddenly, he began to laugh, a wild, unhinged sound. He had truly become a monster, torn between the thirst for revenge his father had instilled in him and the memory of a kind, resilient woman. If only he had met her sooner, his life might have been different. News of Clara's accidental death reached the country quickly. Ethan looked at the report from his private investigator with a blank expression. He knew it was a message from Julian. Since Evelyn's return, life had found a new, peaceful rhythm. His uncle and aunt had retired to the countryside. His cousin was released from prison and had resumed his position in the company. His parents were enjoying their own lives. Everything seemed settled. But Ethan knew there was one last-time bomb waiting to be defused. In the end, his father and uncle had softened. After all, Julian still had Shaw blood flowing through his veins. Late one night, on a deserted highway, two sports cars were engaged in a high-speed race. Suddenly, one car flipped, tumbling through the air before erupting in a massive fireball. The other car pulled to a stop a safe distance away. The driver watched the inferno with a calm, steady gaze. Sometime later, the wail of sirens filled the night. The next day's news bulletin reported the tragic story. World-renowned plastic surgeon dies in fiery car crash. What are you watching? Evelyn asked, coming downstairs with Lily in her arms. Nothing, Ethan said, switching off the TV. He stood up and took the baby from her. Evelyn glanced at the blank screen. She was sure she had heard the words, plastic surgeon. Her heart skipped a beat. She remembered an anonymous text she had received a few days ago. I'm leaving, Evelyn. She turned to look at Ethan. He seemed to be in a very good mood. She said nothing and walked towards the kitchen. In the space where Evelyn couldn't see him, the barest hint of a triumphant smile touched Ethan Shaw's lips. The end.